Welcome back to It Tastes Like Burning. This is Matt.
This is Jesse.
And we're going to give you the old positive details and how to contact us. You can get a hold of us through ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Patreon at It Tastes Like Burning. You can find us on YouTube at It Tastes Like Burning. I recommend podcasts for that search. And we're in a brand new year, Jesse. Fiscal year, at least.
Yeah, money year.
So what's hot, new, and busted?
Not a lot busted. Hot and new. We're hoping to upgrade some Knox boxes, our key release systems. We're got a new command ride sitting out there being built right now. I think that's pretty close, isn't it?
Yeah, I suspect that'll be into November or beginning of December, somewhere
in there. Just, nothing special, just a Tahoe with some lights and some decals, not anything extravagant.
No.
Pretty mild as far as stuff like that goes.
The close of the budget year, usually, I'm kind of weird with the budget. So, just for pretend numbers, let's say our annual budget's $100,000 a year. And let's say that I spent $80,000. I have no problem turning back in $20,000. It just doesn't bother me. The city works with it. I work with it. And other than that, this year, we cut it really, 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 really close. Basically, the budget was able to conclude with $1,200 left in it for the year. And that is not good to take a budget down that tight. The kicker is just this year, we're still dealing with inflation, is what's just killed us bad.
Well, we had a lot of mechanical issues this year, stuff that either broke or had been needing some pretty serious maintenance for a while, and it was time to get some of that stuff done. It was to the point where we can spend some maintenance dollars on some pretty decent projects to get things back up to snuff, or we can kick this can down the road another year and let's look at apparatus replacement kind of situation. And it was good time to do some of that stuff for that aspect of it.
So speaking of apparatus replacement, one conundrum that we're in is I've got one more truck that technically has to be replaced. We run our apparatus 20 years. And I've got one truck that's, assuming we ordered today, the delivery would come in, and this truck would be 22 years old. It was built in December of 2004. Or sorry, delivered in December of 2004. That's the plate.
Yeah.
And yeah, so here we are. And it's 20 years old. Truck's fine.
Yeah, that was one of the ones that we did some pretty heavy maintenance on. Did some work to get that longevity out of it.
And the problem is that so that's the one that's up for replacement. But I have another truck, call it its younger sister, that's exactly 10 years younger. And I don't like that truck at all. And I mean, do not like that truck. Now, the older sister, it's pretty quirky. There's some caveats to it, but at the end of the day, once you're familiar with it, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, well, but both of those trucks are quirky, right?
Right.
So, just imagine in your eyes a rescue pumper, right? That's what this is, rescue pumper, that has a open pump panel concept midship with no pre-connected lines. That's quirky, and it has calves, right?
Right. That was one of the first calves engines in the United States.
Yeah, it's kind of quirky, a Frankenstein, so to speak. Works well enough. I would argue that it's probably not the most. It's better as a rescue than it is as an engine, right?
I think so, and it's just at the end of the day, it's because of the pre-connects.
Right.
But I will say this, that truck, if we ever had an apartment fire, and we've had apartment fires, those are the two trucks that we would want to have on apartment fires, and it's because nothing's pre-connected and because of the unique hose trays that are in the truck. Each hose stretch off of the crosslays can be 400 feet.
Yeah.
And that's without adding anything.
My struggle with them is that you don't have a centralized control station. So if you want to control officer-sized discharges, you have to make a lap around the truck to control the officer-side discharges. You can only control those discharges at the outlet. And so that makes it difficult if you're using a couple of different types of nozzles or different lengths of hose or something that's going to cause you to need to have different pressures or gate something back. It's just real difficult to keep that in check and operating smoothly.
On the volunteer perspective, particularly being volunteer, it is not volunteer friendly from an engineer's perspective.
No, it's really a labor intensive engineer.
Yeah, you I'm going to sound like a schmuck when I say this, but you actually have to understand pump ops to pump either one of those trucks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you actually have to understand what you're doing.
And if you do understand what you're doing, it doesn't take long to realize, oh my God, this is hard. This is
right.
You have to be attentive. You have to really watch what's happening. It's not just to set the old pressure governor to the pressure and go get stuff and hang around the other end of the apparatus and watch what's happening. And like, you have to be attentive.
Yeah. And I mean, because everything's basically 4 discharges are handled through the same gated valve, and you pressure regulate by just adjusting the gate, not the pressure on the truck. I mean, that's the first part of it. If you come up in our system, then you just see trucks and you're like, oh, this is how they work. And then a few years go by and you finally encounter another truck and you have a moment where you're standing there staring at the pump panel and you kind of have, well, alcoholics call it a moment of clarity, where you're standing there and you're like, wait a minute, why is this one easy?
Yeah.
Why does this truck? Oh my God. Yeah, there's some unique challenges to pumping either one of those trucks.
But the other side of it is you get an incredibly capable Swiss Army knife a truck that has tons of storage and
utility.
It's utilitarian to the max. It's it's give and take, right? You can't have everything. There is no perfect apparatus, because if there was, everywhere in the country they'd all look the same.
Right.
So,
and you can sling water off of it. I know the absolute hardest I've ever worked as an engineer, and arguably the most hose lines and water I've ever flowed off of a truck was
one of those.
Was with that truck. And the fact of the matter is that, the other kind of advanced part of pump ops here is that when you truly need to flow a massive amount of water, everyone forgets that you can still crack open those 2.5-inch valves on the hydrant and run more supply in to the truck. And if you're really cute, you can actually start isolating lines directly dedicated off of the hydrant. They still run through the truck.
Yeah. it's interesting. Kind of one of the, because we're all low pressure nozzles, it makes it manageable. If we had standard automatics, 100 psi nozzles mixed in with 50 psi nozzles and stuff like that, it would be unmanageable. You couldn't control it.
That's how we kind of salvage
Yeah.
salvage and make it easy again for the engineer. Is
Yeah.
all of our nozzles are low psi nozzles, and I do mean all of them.
Yeah, even the master streams and
Right.
stuff. So you can make it work and have smooth bores and automatics and all that because you're running generally the same nozzle pressure. So it does work out, but you throw something else in there where you're feeding another truck or something like that. It gets nightmarish.
Yeah.
And I would say that Blitzfire, you run that 50 psi Blitzfire, you run it on low pressure, boy, you better not overpump that thing.
No. Yeah.
Because it loses all of its stream shape and capabilities really, really fast. It does not work.
We had let's see. One day we had 2 structure fires just recently. One mutual automatic aid, and the other one was in town. Thankfully, it's starting to cool down in Texas. I know that during the day it was still in the 90s, but that evening fire wasn't too bad. I think it was probably already dropped down into the low 80s, if not 70s. And the first fire, I don't see how this would ever end up in court, but just in case, I know that it is under investigation for nefarious activities. Have no clue what the result of that'll be, but the fact that there was a suspicion of possible arson, that's going to dictate tactics on scene pretty quick. And so for the general public in that community that doesn't understand that if it's arson, you don't know how many other awesome tricks and traps and booby traps and just what surprises lay inside, so you end up having to wait pretty much for the thing to just burn down.
I'm thinking back through 20 plus years, 25 years, and I don't think I remember. That may be the second call I remember where there was actual booby traps, right? It's just not.
No, it's not a thing.
It's not common.
I mean, I know of one house that I went to early in my little career. So we get on scene. There is definitely smoke very lightly inside the house. Everything's closed up. Okay. All the lights are on. We walk in the front door. The entire house is cleared of everything. And completely around the house are red, like Dixie cups with paper towels and newspapers sticking out of them. I mean, there's hundreds of these things. Now, we've got our SCBA on and stand there, kind of walk up and look at it, and there's a very clear liquid in the cup. And there's smoke inside the house. And I forgot where the fire was at. I think it was in the sink is where it was at. So in the sink, you walked in the front door, there's living room, no furniture. There's the cups all on the floor and in the window seals and everything with the paper towels and this clear liquid. And you can see the smoldering coming up from the kitchen. So we walk up, look, there's a fire in the sink.
Turn the sink on?
Yeah. And then walked out of the house and grabbed, the fire marshal was there and just told him, like, hey, no. We're just going to stand here for a really long time.
Yeah.
But that was possible arson, not a trap.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. The only other call where there was actual booby traps and traps was a drug lab that I went to at one point, and there was definite things set up there to inhibit your ability to enter and fight fire.
but was it particularly targeted at the fire crews or their competition?
Probably yes. That are the local crackheads that knew where to go.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm going to step out on a limb here and say I don't think their intent was to maim responding personnel.
Yeah, maybe cops, but not firefighters. Yeah, that wasn't the goal. And it was
Now this one that we're talking about, I could probably argue pretty easily that this one had intent to
kill firefighters.
yeah. Which
Yeah.
is pretty unusual.
Yeah, yeah. It was
So-
a pretty well thought out plan that, thank goodness, was the responding first due kind of were aware enough to realize, wait a minute, no, right? Because it was set up to wreak havoc. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all I can say is that everyone got lucky. And there's a couple of little like victory stories from different departments. The first department on scene, they were making entry on the back door because they could not get through the front door. Like they could not do it. So they went to the back side of the house and could see that there was a whole bunch of furniture and stuff blocking through like the big open glass doors and windows. There was stuff blocking the doors. So they went ahead and forced entry there, and they got inside, and the officer of that crew kind of realized, like, oh, there's something bad about this.
Yeah.
And I'm not 100% sure what they saw, but there was something that they saw that made them back out there. And there was another crew that was working on a garage and get inside the garage and then realize, like, oh no, this is actually really bad here. This is a definitive trap here. And then there's another crew, another department that's kind of on another part of the house, and they stumble into paint cans and stuff that's all kind of stacked together in precarious positions. And to them, it's really weird. And that's kind of the kicker is that everyone spread across the scene kind of realizes all kind of together.
Yeah, simultaneously
That
almost.
like, hey, where's the radio? Something's wrong. So
really, really good work on those guys for recognizing something that you don't see
yeah,
really ever, right? Once in a career. So good for them. That was a good
we
thing.
were teaching a class this weekend, and something that I was really emphasizing to people is don't make assumptions. Just what you obviously see. That is what it is. Don't try and like explain why the cartoon box of dynamite in the living room is there with a barrel of jet fuel on top of it. Like, that's really uncommon. Don't try and explain that. It is obvious what that is. It is okay to call it how you see it. And realize, like, no, that's weird. There's something really, really weird about that. We shouldn't be doing this. It's run with the obvious. Don't make assumptions. Don't make justifications.
Yeah.
Don't assume.
So we always talk about the give them the good and the bad. And I've noticed in the last few weeks that we may have bitten off a little more than we could chew.
You think?
On recruiting, right? So we've had this huge influx, and it's really difficult to manage that many new people at one time, and keep them all on the right train. And just cautionary tale there, right? And we're managing it, right? We're not giving up, and we're not going to back down from the challenge or say, hey, come back next year or whatever, right? But we realize that 20 or 30 at a time might be a little bit too much for our ability to handle that influx, right? Sanity, right? But granted that we don't need 20 or 30 at a time either, right? We could deal with 10 at a time. 10 at a time or 12 is a good number, right? So just things that, you can't, you plan and you think things through, and things that you don't realize is that, suddenly you develop little packs and cliques and these new people trying to help their buddy survive, and you see that as a little bit of a challenge, right? You see that you've got the how do you keep them in gear, right? They're coming too fast for us to outfit them, right? And all this spurred off of a short little run of basically advertising that we were looking for people.
Well, the other thing I'm going to add to that, though, is that we did have a reputation.
Well, the reputation carries them, right? But the ads triggered the momentum, right? That we're still riding the wave of. Like, it's starting to taper down, and that's been done for 2.5 months.
I think it's closer to 3.5 or 4.
Yeah, it's been done for a while. Like, that's been over. The ads have been over. And we're still seeing, last month we saw, 6?
I don't know.
Make it through the process.
And many.
This month we're looking at 3 or 4 make it through the process. And realize that we not everybody that applies gets to the point of actually becoming a member, right?
Right. No, now that's one thing that I would argue that we have the luxury of right now. Is that beggars can't be choosers? Well, we're not begging.
Yeah.
So, like, there's a certain point there of where I truly believe our interview and application process needs to be fair, okay?
Yeah.
And that it's not the,
Hug a Month Club.
Yeah, and it's not the Junior Woodchuck Club either, okay? But if you come in and the interview committee just gets bad vibes, like everyone comes out of that interview and says, "Yep, serial killer."
Yeah,
it's okay. Pass on them.
Yeah,
I mean, you have an interview committee, and if the interview committee says no, then I highly recommend following the interview committee's recommendation.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's enough volume of applicants that it literally just a bad feeling is enough, right?
Right.
It's not like we're destitute and struggling for folks. We've got a steady flow of folks. Because I would consider, for us, 3 or 4 a month to be a sustainable number, right? A real number. This 9 to 12 a month is kind of a little bit absurd, almost, right?
Yeah.
And that goes back into our budget, right? That's why part of why our budget got tapped so hard this year, because there's a lot of expense to bringing in people and training them and setting them up with PPE and all the things that go along with adding folks to your roster. It's not just wham and done and they're here. I mean, you've got to do something with them when you get them, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, now, we were sitting up at the station late last night after, I don't know, not quite a 12-hour day, but...
For me it was.
call it a 10-hour day, I guess. And there was one of our new guys. He was sitting there, and Jesse just basically asked the checking in question, and he was kind of telling us about it, his current experience. And I don't know how to address his concern. And his concern is, for lack of better words, there's a bunch of characters, individuals, and personalities on the department. And he's a young man. He's also a young man with a really, really unique perspective. Just because of the way he grew up and where he lived. And just trying to fit in and find your tribe, for lack of better words. Make friends. And I really don't have time to be remotely interjecting, and I don't want to interject in that.
No,
I think there needs
some of
to
that's
be
just got to sort out on its own, right?
There needs to be a certain part of adulting, welcome to adulthood, and standard pecking order that's got to get sorted here.
Yeah. And a lot of this is there's a certain amount of this that is a crowding issue, right?
Right.
We're shoving too many people into a couple of stations with the anticipation of another station coming online, and we want to have the people available to staff the next station that comes online. So it's a little preemptive on our part to plan ahead and have people ready to go.
Yeah, we staffed early.
Yeah. To make sure that we can staff this next station. But with that, we're kind of overstaffing a couple of stations. And so it creates its own little problems altogether, right? Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah.
You know about that?
I know something.
You keep talking.
Yeah, there's something interesting there. So we know that we're trying to bring this other station online. We know that we need people for it. I keep explaining to the city, like, be proud of us for being proactive. Like, understand that this is us being proactive, knowing that we're going to have to deal with this. And it's better for us to kind of, in my mind, have the resources available day one when the doors can go up and down versus being caught off guard with an empty station with trucks in it and nobody to respond out of it.
Right. Yeah, there's a it just is, there's part of a pecking order anytime you join an organization. And it's not that we encourage it. And to kind of highlight one thing is when we were talking to this young guy, it literally is being the new kid at middle school and just trying to, again, find your group of friends.
Yeah.
And it's because what he was describing to me, I would argue, though, from my perspective, annoying. There was nothing terrible, wrong, bad, worrying happening there.
Yeah.
There's just plus the other kicker on this is that a lot of our applicants now, he's on the younger end. Right. He's on the younger end, and a lot of the particularly newest group of people, they're in their late 20s, 30s. Yeah. I mean, they comparatively are almost twice his age.
Right. With more life experience. Right. Or more fire experience or whatever.
Right. And then multiply that by completely different perspective because they're all he didn't even grow up in the U.S.
Yeah.
I mean, like, so he's got a very unique perspective. And socially, he's fine, but he's highly intelligent because he was homeschooled. And he grew up outside of the U.S., so he's got a different perspective. I mean, these are all highly desirable traits on my end. And I would even argue he's not socially awkward. He's not.
He's very engaging.
Right.
I mean, the socially awkward kid is truly socially awkward over there, and he's managing to let down his guard enough to actually fit in a little bit. Right. You know, it's hard. It's different. You know, that it's definitely that middle school analogy.
Yeah.
And it'll take all of those guys a year to even really settle into where they're
much less know each other. I mean, and I've been thinking about this last night, is I don't know how to do this. I don't know if it'd be probably be impossible to do right now because just the time of the year, but try and maybe go to Walmart, buy a whole bunch of just cheap baseball gloves, buy a cheap bat, get I don't know, not even a baseball, softball, just get a Nerf ball or something, and then have normally scheduled training, and then just go out to one of the baseball fields, and I don't care if it's 20 on 20 or whatever, just do something like that.
Yeah, well, the dodgeball drill is pretty decent for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I've also been thinking, and this is the first time I've talked to you about it, I've been thinking about we need to maybe establish a new recruit orientation program and find somebody to stick over that, and once a month
Well, yeah, I would argue that's desperately needed, but
I'm not going to do it.
I'm not doing it. And then the problem is that if me and you don't do it, Gene can't do it. So who does it?
Yeah, we're gonna have to look down the list. Like that's down the list thing.
The one that I think would be perfect for it is, and he's been on this show before, and he's helping a neighboring department with their training.
Yeah.
He's the one to do it.
Yeah. Or even, I mean, I can think of probably 4 or 5 people that it would give them some purpose, and it would be that they could do it if they would engage their brain and want to do it. I can think of a handful of people, and maybe it's not the same person every time, but maybe we do a train the trainer one time, and then establish a group of 4 or 5 people that could do that, and go from there. Not a bad idea. In some months they may not have to do anything, and sometimes they may want to send somebody back through again.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, this is all growing pain stuff for us. I mean, this is all uncharted territory. I mean, if we were at a career department, you'd have a training officer that's literally wrangling these new recruits.
Yeah.
And they take care of it. And we've tried to get some of our younger officers to be a little more proactive on it. And they'll do it if I poke them with a stick, but they won't just do it. And I get it. I do. But if they wanted to do it, they would do it.
Right.
That's the short answer.
Well, and I think a lot of them, because, I'm 85-90% of our department has never been at another department, right?
Oh, I suspect it's a lot higher than that.
Right. This is what they know.
Yeah.
This is all they know. And we're so unique Well, everybody's unique, right? Everybody's got their
We're
own
all
thing.
snowflakes.
Yeah. So it's a different set of challenges, and it's hard to find somebody that can relate. I got off into a weeds on a post on NVFC the other day, and I'm literally just beating this guy up over you're taking what's failing everywhere, and that's what you're wanting to be your example. And I'm telling you, there's an example over here that works, but you got to commit and do it, right?
I had this discussion when I was on my sales trip this week. I was talking to a department in Oklahoma, and we're talking about the department, and I'm still adjusting to the fact that where I'm in another state and people still know the department. And the conversation was basically started with, how are you doing with volunteers? Here's our numbers. Jesus, how'd you do that? It's a long story. And then we start talking more and more in depth. And then he gets to, so how are you running your schedules and your shifts? And I'm like, I don't. And he's like, what? How? Why? And I'm like, well, the why is simple. The more people that I schedule, the less people I have on scene. And he's like, wait, what? And I'm like, yeah, I'll say it again. The more people I schedule, the less people I have on scene. That's a proven formula.
Yeah.
Do not schedule.
Yeah.
Leave it open. Have a culture at the station. People will hang out. They'll get your first out trucks. People will backfill on the back end. You'll get more people on scene if needed. And then from there, you have people to cover extra calls.
Yeah, that was the deal, you know. Schedule ensures minimal staffing.
Yeah, I mean,
indisputable, right?
yeah.
But what else? It also ensures maximum staffing, right?
I never asked how many people were on scene for the first fire that day. I suspect, and that fire was out in a county perspective on a map, it's out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
Okay, that's a long ways to go.
It was 30-ish.
Okay. And then that fire that we had later that evening, there was at least another 30 to 40 there.
Yes.
Okay. So we're talking 2 fires, 2 different times of the day, one in the middle of the day, one on a Friday evening. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Like, all I can say is you don't have to schedule. It's a culture thing. It's an encouragement thing. It's a training thing. And you got to have, your membership has to have value in the organization that they're serving with. They're not an indentured servant. They shouldn't have that attitude that if I don't go, no one's going to go. There's nothing wrong with someone having time off, or God forbid, spending time with their family.
Yeah.
Or even worse, just spending time off and them not be burdened by it.
And one of the success stories that I can point to that's, and time will tell, right? They've got to figure out their growing pains just like we do. But one of our neighboring departments that's historically struggled and has gotten down into the below teens kind of numbers of manpower is today sitting at around 30, right?
Yeah.
And they literally put an engine out on 2 different structure fires on Friday. They were going en route as the tones were being finished, right? With a staff truck, not one guy in an engine. Like they put a crew of 3 or 4 or 5 in an engine and bounced out the door within 30 seconds. And that's a testament to, you know, if you're proactive about it and you're doing something to kind of bridge that gap and figure it out, it's works. Now, we'll see if they can develop the culture to maintain that, because that's the next kind of challenge in that, right? Develop the internal culture of keeping those people to hanging out, to doing things, to
Let's go
being
down that
available.
rabbit hole for a second. From my idiot perspective, I would argue that probably the most important thing that they need to do is reevaluate their current culture, because they're running the same foundational doctrines. So they've got the same articles, bylaws, constitution, SOPs, SOGs. You have the same chief structure, same officer structure, and you have the same culture generally within the organization, okay? But you've had an influx of growth. So you got to zero in on the why, and then you got to have that moment of reflection to say, why were all these other people leaving? What was actually causing them to leave, and try and address that right now in the organization to say, okay, what's chasing them away? What's causing them to leave? And it's not just a personnel thing. I'm
No.
sorry. Can't just sit there and say, oh, well, it's that guy. It's 100% that guy.
Yeah, because if it's that
not.
simple, cut the legs off of it. Right?
Yeah.
But it's not that simple.
Yeah. And in this particular case, in this organization, I know it's not just that guy. There's other things there that they need to address. And it can be really simple stuff. I would argue your driving policy. What's more important? Being exceedingly restrictive on your engineers and your drivers and operators, and that they have to be on the department for 35 years and they have to have a PhD in hydraulics before they can even sniff a brush truck handle? Or do we just figure out how to hurry up and get them the training that they need, drive with them as much as possible, and turn them loose?
Yeah.
And just browbeat them into being absolutely safe.
Yeah.
I mean,
it all goes back to the training thing.
Yeah.
And, we still see it, and we see the ones that and that's part of what's kind of turned their tide, is that they've developed more of a desire to train and more of a training culture inside their department. That's a big, and that's being pushed by a couple of individuals in that department to get to that level, and they're the ones that are ultimately making that success happen.
right.
But it's through training. It's not through the chief or anything like that. Now, the chief can direct the training, but it's the desire to train of the department as a whole that's making that shift. And you see it in the departments that don't train, right? They're dying the death of 10,000 paper cuts, and they can all. I hear it, and I stay in tune with nationally enough that, I hear these. Well, we train once a month. Well, that's not it. That's not the answer. And training once a month and can't be. Well, we go through the trucks. Well, that's not training. That's doing your job. Going through the trucks, that's part of the job. The training is the learning how things operate, operating things, going through scenarios, doing the bread and butter operation stuff, learning how to respond to this or that, and what the, and with that comes the certification side of it. If you're not chasing the certifications, then all your training's literally wasted, right? You're just wasting somebody's time, energy, and effort.
Right.
So figure out how to tie the certifications into it so that you're not wasting their time, energy, and effort. And I know Texas is different, because you can literally have no training and no knowledge and become the fire chief tomorrow, right? That's Texas. But not everywhere's that same way. And but if you take that mantra of no training, putting no effort into it, and the fire chief tomorrow, and you just propagate that through everywhere, what do? You get this ridiculously non-functional system that doesn't work, right? You've
Yeah,
got to
I
tie
mean, I think of all the different departments I've encountered, some of them are really good, some of them are just really average. And that's the vast majority of them, good and average. It's actually pretty rare to stumble into a bad department that's really, really struggling hard. And they all have a pretty solid common theme where they've got a very junior chief, not an age, but an experience, but they keep cycling through people.
right.
Like the chief has been chief for 12 seconds and he's been on the department 3 minutes. And now they're going through another chief and another chief and another chief. That's a bad cycle to be stuck in. That would be one where I would say you really need to double down on your training, reach out, utilize your resources around you, and really start grabbing whatever opportunities that you have available to you.
Yeah.
And start actually getting some consistency in there.
Yep. Absolutely. We're at a good spot.
Works for me. We're busier than hell for the rest of the month, too.
Yeah. And in the next month, it's October's, I'd almost refer to it as hell month.
I hate October so much. I hate it.
Yeah.
New budget, city, county, fire prevention month are stupid. Just schedules can't accommodate any of that. Then you throw in the fire academy, and it's just like, oh my Christ!
And
District meetings and
no matter how I wrangle it in my head or how we try to adjust schedules and figure it out, the fact of the matter is it's too hot in July to have a fire academy in Texas. Period.
yeah, really, and it needs to be July, June, and August. I would argue throw September in there.
Yeah.
Historically, September, I think, is hotter than August.
Sometimes, yeah.
So, in my limited experience in this godforsaken, weather-stricken state,
Yeah.
so
It's tough. So we're stuck to that. We can't wait a year, right? We can't make people wait a year to get their initial training. So we got to do it twice a year. So that's spring and fall, and that's it. And the spring, for whatever reason, seems to be the lighter student load. The fall seems to be the heavier student load. And I wish it was opposite.
yeah, it makes no sense because the spring is when there's not. Football dominates Texas. So you would think that in the fall, particularly in October, that people would be busy with their kids and college and pro sports, and then a little more opened up in the spring. But no, it's not how it goes. All right, wrapping it up. If you ever want to reach out to us, you can find us at ittasteslikeburningcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Patreon at ittasteslikeburningcast. You can find us on YouTube at ittasteslikeburningpodcast. And
Don't hesitate to reach out.
well, we want questions, concerns, thoughts, issues, statements. No litigation.
Yeah, no.
We don't want that.
Yep.
This is Matt.
This is Jesse.
Have a good evening.